This episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast is brought to you by Lads to Leaders. Are you looking for something to help your kids learn to lead, both now and in the future? What if you could find something that offered year-round opportunities along with a yearly convention to help hone skills and learn to deal with competition in an encouraging and loving atmosphere? In 1968, Dr. Zorn began a program with 8 boys in hopes that they would learn to lead in their churches and communities. Now, 55 years later, there are 20,000 boys and girls each year that participate in activities that are true to the mission of Dr. Zorn's program. Lads to Leaders has trained over 250,000 young people and brings whole congregations together with competitive and non-competitive events, activities for people ages 3 to 103, and Bartimaeus events for special needs participants of all ages. The convention takes place in 10 cities of the U.S., as well as the countries of India, the Philippines, and Romania. The leaders of the future are trained in the present. So go to ladstoleaders.com to check out all the things this program has to offer. That's leaders.com.
Welcome into the Helping Healing Humor podcast, brought to you by the Slawberger Chase 5K, 10K for land and car. It is good to see Ben and Will. Ben just got back from Disney with the family.
We are back. I'm glad to be back to work so I can rest again.
Yeah.
So
that's the crazy thing, Will. I don't know if you've reached that point in your life, but we have reached the point where we need a vacation from vacation and all that fun stuff.
That's true. I just always try and get a vacation after vacation any way I can.
Yeah, for sure.
But we'll still playing double team on one kid. So we're trying to play zone and actually using our older kids to help us with the younger ones. So it's complicated when you're trying to, follow around 5 of them. So
the older ones, you have 2 older ones have come to the dark side. So they've joined the other team, and I'm sure, but they play both. I'm sure
sometimes they've joined this team.
That's how kids do.
They're like those characters in the, like Wolverine, and some of those that they're good sometimes and they're bad sometimes, just depends on the day. Yeah.
The anti-hero. Good deal.
It's like, depending on how well this episode goes, on how I raise Emmy and everything we're going to get into may depict on if I'm able to keep having more kids at some point. if I can learn how to handle one, then we can move on to maybe more.
The truth is you'll never learn how to handle one. You just gotta go for it. I mean, it's just go.
Are we ready for this?
I told somebody the other day, it's like, I'd rather have 100 teenagers right now than I think like 2 to 3 toddlers. Cause the children's ministers in the world, whoever you are, you're the most amazing humans that have ever existed. And to all the mothers in the world, you're the most amazing humans that have ever existed.
I'm here at school, and today, maybe for the first time, recording the podcast from my office at the school. And it's the TK and kindergarten teachers that I have the utmost respect for. So
the real MVP, as they say.
The special needs pre-K teachers take it in my book.
You got to say that too. So
I remember,
but yes, I would agree with you.
A few months after we had gotten Haley and Daniel to come to our house, and we would on Sunday afternoon, to survive the weekend, we would take them to Chick-fil-A or a place with a play place. So this is pre-COVID, obviously. And they were playing, and there was another couple sitting there with us. And they're like, they had 2 kids, and they're like, man, going from 1 to 2 is like going like 1 to 4, and we're like, well, we wouldn't know, because these 2 came to us at the same time, and they're like, can we put you on our church prayer list? And I was like, absolutely. We're not turning that down at all. So definitely the man-to-man is difficult. I can't even imagine the zone, and not planning on switching to that strategy anytime soon. But, I've learned not to tell the Lord what he can and can't do either. So we'll just stay out of that discussion. But speaking of kids, Ben, you're in your office. You work and help counsel the kids there at Mars Hill Bible School, which means you play an important part in their life. And we want to talk a little bit about the importance of books. And I'll be honest, growing up, I was not a book guy. I'd much rather watch a cartoon. And what was cool, you're at Mars Hill. I can remember one of the only projects I remember from being in elementary school, and I believe it was at Marcel, we actually all wrote a kid's book. And I can remember that. And we had a big day at school where our parents came, and we kind of presented our book. We illustrated it, wrote it. Of course, mine was about an Alabama football fan and all that good stuff. But that's important. And now I can't get enough books. I try to read the Bible every day. It helps that I teach it every day, the work week at least, and then Sunday, of course. But I also try to read, a history book here and there. And then, of course, podcasts help. But just want to talk a little bit of today about the importance of books and the therapy it can give, not only kids, but adults, but mainly kids.
Yeah. So, a lot of what I do here, and the kids get disappointed sometimes when I come in and I'm like, we're not going to read today. We're going to do something else. They're all like, where's our book? So they really like to be read to. And of course, it's my favorite kind of books. It's picture books, because that's what I can understand. I like to listen to a lot of books. I listen to a lot of things to try to help with the counseling world and with ministry, just like I know you do, Travis. You're a better reader than I am. When I read, I go to sleep sometimes, so it's easier for me to listen to it. I can listen 7 hours to a book while I'm driving and I'm fine. But it's, if I sit in bed and start trying to read a book, I might go to sleep. But there's a lot of good information in them and things. I think the thing that makes them so appealing to both kids and to adults is that, you're learning something new. You're seeing something, more that you might not have seen, or from an angle that you might not have seen it before. And so that's where it's important with the kids in school is, I may want to talk to them about anger, or I may want to talk to them about anxiety, and I could sit there and go try to lecture them about anxiety. But it's probably not going to do real well. They're gonna connect to a character in a book, or connect to a storyline in a book, more than they're gonna connect to me just going, okay, here's what anxiety is, here's how it works, here's what happens in your body, that sort of thing. It's better for them to kind of see it in someone else. It's a little bit less, even if I'm working with them individually, it's less, I guess, invasive or scary for them if it's somebody else that's being addressed in the story. So there's a lot of really good writers who have done some good work with that. And so we're going to share some of that with you. Before we do, I want to let you know about another book, or actually I'm going to let Travis tell you about another book that's coming out for adults. So Travis has got a book that he and Whitney have just completed. And I'm not sure. Tell us a little bit about when that book is going to come out, Travis.
Well, I'm hoping, I hope to have some in hand for our Creators Conference there in Atlanta, the Ministry League Experience that Thursday. I can't promise that, but I'm hoping and shooting for at least by the end of the summer of 2022. You can pre-order now. It's been a busy week for all of us, Ben, with your family. I'm glad you got that. And with us, my 41st birthday, and our pre-order has begun. And man, it's been mind-blowing. It's been awesome to see how many orders we've already got. We're very close to having the book fully funded, as in all the money that we've put in to have it done, edited, all that stuff is so close to being covered. But it's about our journey together through my leukemia battle. In the middle of that, we were fostering Haley and Daniel, and kind of up in the air. And really, it's a story about God and how he saw us through that, and how he maintained our hope through the darkest times in our life, and especially in our marriage, and how we, I guess in some ways, and we, in the book, we go into this, there is like not a happy ending. There's not a, there's always going to be those things that you're dealing with, but it's the fact that we have hope in that. So yeah, you can go to our store and pre-order that. If you're in the Florence, Fayetteville, Huntsville, Albertville area, you can reach out to me. You can do at our email address, hello@benandtravis.com, or you can reach out to me in another way through Messenger, and we can arrange a pickup to save you on shipping and handling. But that's something we've worked a long time on. It's taken us what seems like forever. it's a little overwhelming and scary to think you're going to put this work out there, and overwhelming how fired up everybody is about it. But I appreciate you bringing that up. Hopefully we'll have an episode here soon to kind of unpack that a little bit more. But yeah, it's been an amazing thing speaking to therapy to kind of process all that we went through and see how we feel about it now, and how our relationship with God has grown and matured. And by maturing, that means being more open with him about how we feel. And as an Enneagram 7, and one of our tools of surviving is reframing, we wanted to make sure to put that in there. And it's not a reframing of, in some ways, it's not a reframing of, oh, everything's happy and go lucky and all that stuff. It's actually kind of reframing me to be able to work through those things that a lot of times I want to ignore and put a shine on that is not necessary. God does not need our defending. He doesn't need me to defend his sovereignty. And that's something that I think that I've tried to do in the past. And so something we worked through in the book, and excited and hopefully praying that it will help a lot of folks out there.
Well, and I think to speak to that, you've got this book that you guys are working through these things in the book. And there's a lot of people out there who are working through those things because they've gone through similar situations. So to kind of speak to what we're talking about today, as people read that book, there's going to be emotions that they have. Certainly your family members. I know when I've read the portions of the book that you've sent me, I've worked through some of the thoughts that I had at that time, but also other things that I've gone through. So I think that's, again, sort of how books connect is we empathize with, we connect with the people who are writing them. And then it also allows us to sort of work through some of those things in our own lives. So I think that's a pretty cool thing.
Well, that's the thing is Whitney and I are not professionals. We're not pros, except through experience. And so I think a lot of times we project that on pros like yourself, Ben, that you guys are the only ones that know how to get through this thing. And one of the lines that we have is, we have certainly not walked this journey perfect.
Yeah.
But we serve a perfect Jesus. And so, where we can't do it, he does it. And really, he's carrying us through all of it. On the Helping Healing Humor podcast, we talk about anxiety and stress and its impact on our everyday lives. We know that finances, including planning for retirement, is one of the leading causes of stress. It can be confusing and overwhelming. There are differing opinions on the best approach. It can be hard to know who to trust. For our retirement planning, Whitney and I trust Greg Howell of Howell Wealth Management at Northwestern Mutual. Greg is professional, knowledgeable, and accessible. He looks at the whole picture and thinks outside the box to create ways to help you reach your financial goals. Retirement planning can be especially challenging for ministers who do not have the benefit of a 401k, but Greg's expertise and creativity can get you on the right path and give you confidence for the future. Text him to schedule your free 15-minute consultation today at 931-638-1576. Be sure to tell him Ben and Travis sent you. Remember, that's Greg Howell of Howell Wealth Management at Northwestern Mutual, 931-638-1576.
So when it comes to working with the kids, one of the things that I kind of wanted to point out were some of the books, and I've got a whole stack of them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Will, what are some things that you have encountered with either with Emmy or with other kids that you think like what are some, I need some resources on this, or I've thought about before. You may not currently need them, but what are some things that you face that you think, man, I wonder if there's something out there that would help with them?
Well, the one thing that's been, difficult at times is emotions. Like I know Emmy this morning, we were getting ready to go eat breakfast with the youth group. And it was just like she accidentally stepped on Lindsay's foot. And when she stepped on Lindsay's foot, Lindsay just kind of screamed out real quick and said, ow, oh, that hurt, stubbed my toe, whatever type sound, and Amy just lost it. I mean, just like, the world has ended because mom's hurt and it was my fault, and there's some of those times where emotions, it's like, man, I have no clue how to handle the emotions that you're feeling other than just let me hold you. And that may be the answer, but ultimately I go, that's probably not the best way. I wish we could talk through it. And I know sometimes that comes, but I mean, emotions are definitely something that it's like, I wish I could maybe figure this out in my own life, but even more in the life of a 3-year-old, that, the ability to understand, and plenty of people have joked with us about, oh, she's got the only child syndrome, and just that idea of, hey, everything doesn't revolve around me and what I desire. There's other things that have to happen. So those are definitely two that, just because of experiences and things that stay at the forefront, little things like that. Disciplining. That's the worst in my mind. My parents growing up were always like, it hurts me way more than it'll ever hurt you. I'm like, well, that's the biggest lie I've ever heard. And then it's like, no, it really does hurt me.
They're actually accurate on that. Yeah.
that it hurts you. Just, I think working through scenarios, how to try and understand each other, because that just becomes extremely difficult.
So like one of the books I read with the little ones is, and I have 2 or 3 that I do throughout the course of the year with the TK and the kindergarten on just feelings. So, it just goes through kind of a poem that's got frustrated and angry and sad and happy, and helping them put words to it. Cause I think, in the young age, like Emmy, it's hard for them to put words to what I'm feeling. So sad and angry can be really similar to each other. Surprised and worried, or surprised and anxious, can be very similar in helping them sort out those feelings. So, I read with them several books about emotions. Something else that you kind of mentioned was the only child syndrome or whatever. Like, this might be something that you have worked through, and all of us have, is, I don't like the sound of no. And so just kind of helping, my story about accepting no for an answer and disagreeing the right way. So as they get a little older, something that they can use, some things. There's some really creative writers. One of the most creative I've ever seen is Julia Cook. She's got this one. She's got this one that's about, no, that one's not hers. I was about to show one that wasn't hers. She has several about, like, Soda Pop Head is another one that she wrote. It's all about when you lose your temper and blow up on people, and how to control that temper. She has one about being interrupting, called My Mouth is a Volcano. So there's always kind of a story about this character that is kind of strange. One, his head turns into a soda pop, soda can or soda bottle, and explodes. So we may read that story, and then I may go take a Dr. Pepper bottle, shake it up, and let them see what happens when it explodes, but then talk to them about what are some ways to calm your frustration, breathing techniques, or whatever else that may come up. So, those are some good bibliotherapy. That's that word Travis was afraid to use earlier. Things that we can sometimes use in certain scenarios. Travis, what are some things that you might think about with your kids?
I think about, I'm kind of with Will there. I mean, that balance, I've got a girl and I got a boy. And as a dad, I'm obviously probably a little easier on the girl than I am the boy. And so kind of dealing with that balance of what is cry worthy, like I try to express to him, hey, that's okay to cry about. Like that's upsetting, and that's fine. If that's your response, that's fine. But we also have to get through this. We got to get it done. There's certain things that you have to do, versus, hey, sometimes I want to sit down and cry with you too. And so to me, that's a difficult balance to try and strike, because we are more aware probably now than ever. And hopefully that's not recency bias that I'm using there, to the mental aspects, And I think Ben and you and I, we kind of grew up in that mid range where it was like the greatest generation were our grandparents. And so then their kids are like, that's the greatest generation and we have to be more like them. And so I think that there's a idea of we have to ignore certain emotions and press on. And there's some truth to that. There is some things that we have to do regardless of how we feel about it. But it's also okay to share our feelings about it.
Yeah.
And so I think trying to strike that balance of, yes, this is bad, but it's not supposed to paralyze us. I think even in my cancer journey, it was mind blowing to me when somebody said, if you heard the news that you got cancer and you survived it, you're a survivor. Whether you've got a week to live, 3 months, 6 months, you're going to live the rest of your life. You're going to be cured. You heard the news. It was devastating and you felt that emotion, which is okay. But you were also able to go, okay, now we can process through that. So
yeah, and one of the books, another author that's got several that I read is Brian Smith, and he does one of his books is just called "Empathy is My Superpower." Learning how to empathize with other people's feelings, not just dealing with our own feelings, but hey, this kid, it talks about getting sick at school, and that's one of the most dreaded things I think that the kids sometimes deal with is, am I going to throw up at school or am I going to get sick at school? Is something bad going to happen? And then everybody's going to make fun of me if I'm going to slip down and fall, and what's people going to say? And so it's kind of this book that sort of goes through a journey of a sister having empathy on her brother, and then learning how to do that at school when people, go through things. And so, stuff like that, just helping not only deal with our own emotions, but how do we also help with other people's emotions? Because, when you look at some of the things that are happening in our world today, it's really obvious that people don't have a good grasp of that, understanding other people's point of views, other people's struggles, how to deal with their own emotions. I think a lot of the things that we're seeing, this emotional intelligence movement that we've talked about a few times on here, that I think is so important, because we've got a lot of kids that are acting out in violence. Those are the kind of things that we help the kids understand their emotions early in life and help them understand other people's emotions early in life. And that sort of, can be a great benefit to them in the long run. And, and it doesn't stop with a lot of these people write books who have some background in these things, but you can take a regular book. I don't know how many of you, or a lot of people are familiar with Dr. Seuss, but you may not know this book. The Sneetches is all about, you got these guys that have stars on their bellies, the star belly Sneetches, and the ones that don't, and they want to be the other one, and they start switching, and then it gets so convoluted nobody knows who's who. And the whole point of it is that we're all Sneetches, we're all people, and it doesn't really matter if we have belly stars or not.
I've got a Christian leadership course with juniors, so talk a little bit about the older kids, and I'm requiring each one of them to read "Grappling with Life: Controlling Your Inside Space" by Lonnie Jones. But we all have those tendencies and things we want, and so growing up, and this is what I have to remember with my kids, is they're learning the thing the first time. I've got 41 years of experience in working through those, and there were people in my life who patiently, and some not so patiently, and I'm thankful for that, helped me to learn those things. And so I think my son and I have grown closer because I read him something just about every night. And sometimes it's the things that has meaning, sometimes just goofball Mario Brothers or something nuts like that. But the working through, and then when they have questions, either A, being able to answer the question, or B, going, I don't know the answer to that. That's some of the only me time that we get. And that's on me to a large degree, but man, that's just like changed our whole dynamic and our relationship of reading with them. Another book that we use a lot is the Sally Lloyd Jones, the Jesus Storybook Bible. Yeah, it's something that we've read a couple of times. Obviously, there's things going to come up in these books that you may have to explain. But just last night, Whitney lets the kids pick, and she's way better at this and more consistent. Let them pick a story from one of their storybook Bibles. And last night was the crucifixion, the death of Jesus. And he's in the tomb at the end of that chapter. And Haley emotionally, is that the end of the story, Mom? Because she didn't want that to be the end of the story. And because she's like me, and we don't like the negative aspects of life. And so Whitney's like, oh, no, that's not the end of the story. And I don't know if they finished it last night or they're going to go back to it tonight. But that's just a huge moment for a kid, a first grader. Yeah. Is that the end of the story? No, that's not the end of the story. So, those are the aspects that also help us grow and stretch us and challenge us. If you're not reading things that challenge you, then I think to some degree you're at least not getting the most out of what you're reading.
Yeah. And I was going to kind of end, I mean, there's tons of books. I could sit here all day and just show books after book. But there's one that I've just recently read that if you're a parent, and I think even if you are just somebody that deals with people at church or deals with people on a daily basis at work, there's some really good information in it. There's also cartoons. I listened to this book before I ordered it. And after I ordered it, I realized there's cartoons in it. So it makes it even greater.
Yeah.
But it's called How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and How to Listen So Kids Will Talk. And it's by Adele Favor and Elaine Maslish, I think is how you say that. But there's some really great stuff in here about just, one of the things they start off with at the very beginning and then they sort of build on it is, when a kid comes in with a problem, you listen with your full attention. You acknowledge their feelings with just a simple word like, oh, or or I see, like you don't go, if they come in going, I'm so mad at Billy, I want to punch him. No, you shouldn't punch him. That's what we want to do. They just say, oh, just acknowledge the feeling. Don't like stop it because it lets them sort of begin to process it. Give the feelings a name. You're angry, you're sad, you're upset, you're frustrated, you're whatever. So that helps them, like what we were talking about, identify and understand what that feeling is. Oh, I see that you're upset that you stepped on mommy's foot and it hurt mommy. I see that made, and then you kind of let them play it out in their own minds. And you might even help them. Sometimes you say, oh, I bet you want to do this. And they may go, no, not really. Or you might just go, well, how does that make you, what does that make you want to do? Or whatever the case may be. And then they talk about situation after situation where a kid comes in like that. And then they begin to formulate the plan in their mind. And it's not nearly as bad as what it would be if you just shut it down or didn't let them talk about it or whatever else. They go, that probably the best choice there would be to whatever. And so it's kind of a neat book. It's got a lot of good stuff in it. So if you're an adult that wants to, look into that, I think it's helpful, not just for talking with kids, but probably talking with anybody because we're all a little bit of a kid at heart. So,
well, before we go, we'll ask the Slawburger Chase 5K, 10K for the landing car. Question of the day: what are you reading right now, or what are you listening to, Ben? If you're more of that, and I'll start. I am actually reading The Day the World Went Nuclear, so probably not the most positive of books. And I'm also reading The Case for the Psalms by N.T. Wright. So pretty excited about that.
So 2 books. One of them is written by our missions minister at Highland Park because he wrote a book for our teenagers. And so it's on how we can trust the Bible, how we got the Bible. So I've been reading through that because he writes books for his classes. So he's way smarter than me.
Or me.
And then the other book that I'm reading or that I've just finished and kind of continue to keep up with is probably not, it's for the adults that are listening for sure. It's called Living with Seal. And it is a book about David Goggins, he is a Navy SEAL. He basically did all the special ops groups of, like, he did the SEALs, he did whatever the Air Force group was and the Army group. And he's quite possibly the strongest man on the earth. And Jesse Itzler, who was a part owner of the Atlanta Hawks, met him at a 100-mile race. And Jesse Itzler was an endurance runner, and he and 3 other guys were doing the 100 miles in 24 hours relay. And David Goggins was there by himself doing the full 100 to prove to another guy that he should be able to run in the Badwater 130, which is basically like 130, 135 miles in the desert. But he had to prove he could run 100 miles in 24 hours. And he had kidney failure. He broke the bones in his feet. Like they said, this was when he was like 260, 270 at the peak of like strong Navy SEAL type guy. And he invites him into his house to live with him for a month. And the first day he has to do like 1,000 pull-ups. And then they're living in Connecticut. A blizzard happens. It's like -5, and he makes him go run 10 miles. And just the whole thing is you can do so much more than what you've ever thought you could do. And Jesse Itzler, a very successful businessman, just said, I was living in a rut. I just had a routine. I was successful, but I wanted to do more with my life. And so it's not a spiritually written book by any means. And there's a few things in there that are not going to be a very Christian focused because you're dealing with a Navy SEAL and just a different lifestyle. But it challenges you. And the whole concept of doing more in your Christian life, it's cool. It's a great listen for those that like to listen to books because Jesse Itzler, he narrates it himself. You may just be careful with some kids in the car if you do. It's just it's one of those books, but it's challenging for sure.
Yeah. So mine is I literally just finished the How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and How to Listen So Kids Will Talk. I just finished it, but I ordered it, so I'm probably about to go back through it and kind of try to mine out some of the stuff that I really like, and you guys may hear more of it in the future. And then the other thing I listen to a lot, which isn't a book, but Travis sent me this podcast, A Short History of podcast, and I got so into that.
You can smash through them too. It's like
on my way to Orlando and on my way back, I listened to a bunch of those. So there's a lot of good stuff there. And I've got a stack of books too that I keep intending to read, but just finding time to read them. So there it is.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being with us for this episode of the Helping Healing Humor podcast. Be sure to download our free ebook, 28 Days of Focused Living, at benandtravis.com and receive all of our Helping Healing and Humor extra content directly in your inbox. We look forward to having you join us at the same Ben and Travis time, same Ben and Travis channel.